So when I was young, my mother, Christine Ann Hall, said to me, "Democracy in America is a love story." I had no idea what she was talking about then, but today I do. When I was young, I began to notice, as we all do, the imbalance of power between men and women, and how that affected my heart at the time, the people around me. I could see how it affects all of our hearts. And now, as an adult, I've come to see how it affects the very core of our democracy. My personal love story began when my husband John and I were married. Our wedding ring symbolizes the commitment that we made to each other to balance masculine and feminine energy within ourselves, within our marriage, and in the world at large. And that balancing is always a dance. 13 years ago, our daughter, Maria McKinney, she came into our personal love story, and not surprisingly, Maria too is a dancer. So John and I as parents are deeply concerned when we look at the troubles in the world today, as I know we all are. We're concerned for her as a woman, we're concerned for the planet, and we're concerned for our democracy. And yet, we're so heartened. We're heartened to see all of you women in the room. We're heartened to see the rise of women here in the United States and globally. And that rising is part of a continuum that's been going on for well over 100 years. When I was young, I learned, of course, about the suffragists who rose and marched for our right to vote. And in the 60s and 70s, as I was growing up, I listened to the women who were speaking out, who rose again, and who marched for our equal rights. And now we have the millennial women of today, in all of their brilliant diversity, who are using technology, stepping into leadership, and who are changing the world, connecting us and having even greater capacity to connect us instantaneously around the world to make change. And we have, of course, the celebration of the 2012 elections. That's proof. Women are rising. We now have unprecedented numbers of women in the United States elected government offices. And we have a way to go, but we're rising. And women are rising not just for women. Women are rising together with men, and we're rising for all people. We're rising for the earth. We're rising for all of life. We're rising to stop violence against women, and we are stopping sex trafficking, child slave labor. We care so much about stopping further nuclear contamination of our world, and it's clear we must continue to rise to stop war and violence worldwide. So we're heartened, and I forgot what I'm going to say. And I just want to say, I'm going to take a minute. I just want to say to any woman in this room, when you're developing your voice, as all of us need to and will do more so, it's so empowering because women share a common support of one another, and it's critical that we don't think we have to be perfect. That's part of what it's been to be a woman, is thinking we have to be perfect, and we don't. So thank you while I take a moment. All right. So that's what I wanted to say. The question for women today is about power. The question for women is, how will we step into equal power with men to determine our future? When will we be equal partners in the decision-making bodies of the world? So 1 year ago today, I had no idea I would be up here speaking to you about this. But on December 6th, I went to see the movie, the documentary film, Misrepresentation. How many of you have seen it? Fabulous. Yeah, so for those of you who haven't, Jennifer Siebel Newsom's documentary film is about how women are underrepresented in government and in corporate boardrooms around America and in the world, frankly, how we are over-sexualized in the media, and how we are marginalized in the important debates of the day. So, when I saw that movie and when I saw the degrading images and the over-sexualized images of women for 90 minutes. Boom, 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 boom. I was enraged. Rising up in me, I was so angry. I thought, what are we going to do about this? I could hardly sit in my seat for the rest of that movie. So when I got home that night, I made a commitment that I was going to change the numbers in my lifetime, that 17% of elected officials in the United States government, and that we were ranked 74th worldwide at the time last year. I realized that I was going to be a part of helping to change those numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So I got home and I watched the evening news, and I have to tell you that did not improve my mood. Daily, are we not assaulted by the news? That clearly everyone is in agreement. It's said everywhere. Our government is broken. Financial institutions failing us. Inequality rising through the roof. Civil liberties curtailed. Our right to public dissent brutalized before our very eyes for simply raising the issue of inequality. Our electoral system dysfunctional. Our democracy is in crisis. So I sat down and I thought to myself, what possibly could have been missing from the Declaration of Independence and from our founding documents that could let us get so far astray here today? So as I read the Declaration of Independence, I realized that even with our Constitution, with its checks and balances, and even with our best intentions, we have clearly yet to create a more perfect union. So as I sat down and I read the Declaration, I read it, and I thought about how the Founding Fathers fought with their lives for freedom, equality, and justice for all. And yet they lived in the context of slavery, empire, the subjugation of women, the eradication of native peoples and the conquest of their lands, all in direct contrast to the very principles that they proclaimed. For more than half of our country's history, a few white men had complete control: executive, legislative, judicial, economic. And that advantage has resulted in the greatest concentration of wealth and power. And that power now threatens the very heart of our democracy. It is destroying the life systems of our planet with a gross assault upon nature, fueling unsustainable development that is driving us to what scientists call the age of extinctions. So my question today is, what are we as women going to do about this? Because that's the question I asked myself that night. As a woman and a mother, what am I going to do about this when we are not at the decision-making tables in sufficient numbers yet? Let me be very clear. This is not to blame men, and this is not to suggest that women are the answer. Alone, men can't solve the problems of the world. Neither can women. It's about partnership. It's about sharing power together, equally, to solve the problems we face in the world today. So what I found missing from our founding documents, was a diversity of people and their voices that were needed to create true justice. Missing were the essential elements needed to safeguard a democracy from the control of moneyed interests. So, gulp, I sat down and I started rewriting the Declaration of Independence word for word until it satisfied me. I mean, why not, you know? Okay, so I wrote a Declaration of Interdependence. That Declaration of Interdependence calls for men and women to partner as never before in human history to declare that all life is sacred and interdependent. It's inclusive of all people. It speaks of our responsibilities and not just our rights as citizens. It protects and calls for an independent and free media. It gets money out of politics, and it calls for equal numbers of men and women in government, and it speaks about the rights of nature, and it affirms our responsibilities to future generations. As its basic premise, it calls for power to be used in service to love and to all people and for all life. So, I want our children to tell the story of how we turn from the love of power and money to the power of love. From control and domination to partnership and cooperation. As I wrote the declaration over the course of 3 weeks, while I was doing the laundry, running around, driving, I had an idea. What if we form the Founding Mothers to ignite an unprecedented number of women in the United States of America, to put our collective voice in the history? And what if we, with new Founding Fathers, partner to edit this declaration, or a declaration, that affirms the values of partnership, love, and interdependence to evolve our democracy? What if we create the founding family to coalesce a new American majority to give voice to we the people as we reclaim our democracy from moneyed interests and declare interdependence? I was starting to believe that we can create a more perfect union in our time. We must build a global politics of love. Women are needed to change the story we see today. And it's time to transform history into our story. What I've learned is that we have everything we need to create a new chapter in this country. The last 50 years have seen the development of international, national, grassroots organizations and leaders working at all levels to change the system. We can become connected, compassionate, resilient communities ready for the changes already upon us due to global warming, and ready to change proactively to stop further destruction of the environment. We can move from the age of extinctions to the age of restoration. We can move from reacting to the system to leading into a future that we know we can create. We need people and organizations joining together across a broad spectrum of issues. We must create a common agenda, a common vision for a sustainable and just world. We need a pro-democracy people's movement dedicated to ending violence and to restoring our world. So last year, as I continued to learn and research, I learned that, in fact, an interdependence movement already exists, and that it's been celebrating for 10 years, September 12th as Interdependence Day in cities around the world. Other people have written declarations of interdependence. I'm not alone. There are many. And yet, none of them have as a basic premise partnership between men and women and the issue of gender parity, nor do they have a pro-democracy focus. As a member of the Women Donors Network, I've learned that national and international organizations have been working to support the transition to gender parity for 30 years or more. With increased funding and more women inspired to participate, that institutional knowledge can be scaled and applied as we move ahead to achieve 50% women in leadership positions across all sectors. An unprecedented partnership of people and organizations. That is how I envision the founding family, where we can coalesce and give voice to we the people. This is not about Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative. This is about working together across all social, religious, political, economic, ideological divides. We must find common values that will unite us. We must do it as if life depends upon it, for it does. So, I invite you to become a part of the founding family. Put your name into the record of our story. At the website, join the mailing list to learn about the worldwide effort for gender parity, about the interdependence movement, about organizations working on pro-democracy reform, and also learn about the organizations already working to restore our world. As Native peoples of the world have always known, we are one family, all living beings. It's time to declare it. And as we declare interdependence here in the United States, and as others do around the world, other nations, we can, in fact, create the founding global family. My mother was right, and don't all mothers love to be right? When we bring our highest humanity to our politics, and when we balance male and female power, democracy is a love story. Love is calling to us all. Let's create a different dance. I'm calling today for a nationwide and global campaign to achieve 50% women in the decision-making bodies here and around the world. The dance of our generation is about equal power and empowerment for all people and respect for all life. On this Valentine's Day, the fabulously courageous Eve Ensler has created the global campaign 1 Billion Rising. She's calling for people to rise up, dance, and demand an end to violence against women. I say to Eve, I see your 1 billion, and I raise you 2. Let's get 3 billion people dancing in partnership to achieve gender parity, to end the violence and restore our world. Are we ready for a new dance? Yes. When love ignites us, and with a new partnership between women and men, we can build a new world together. We can leave a strong and vibrant democracy for us all. I want that love story. Let's dance.